let me again take your time and attention. Last time we were visiting the villages in terms of planning, in terms of the context, and in terms of options which we could use, to make villages village planning rational. Today we look at one of the component of the rural India, that in terms of housing. So we'll look at the housing in terms of role and importance, the context issues, and what are the way we can make housing sustainable. So ultimately, I think before I go back to the housing, I should be able to explain to you the role and importance and the context of housing in human life, human living. So housing remains one of the basic human necessity, roti, kapda, or makan. But don't think that this is limited to this. Housing remains one which provides space for security, safety, credibility, identity. Housing remains the major determinant of quality of life, liberty, dignity, and productivity of human living. Housing is central and valuable to the development of not only individual, communities, cities, states, nation, and the planet. And housing is known to be larger employment and also promoter of industries and promoter of to the economy, prosperity, wealth, and also expenditure. So this is, the housing has its context. Housing also remain valuable for promoting efficiency, stability, liquidity of all the economic system which we have. It also generates wealth for the local institution in terms of the property tax which you have seen. It also helps in promoting the domestic expenditure and also the income, and also it's responsible for promoting small businesses and home-like opportunity, and the entire real estate and land-related development is also hinging on the housing itself. And that's the reason why all the states are involved and committed to provide housing for all as the national agenda. So looking at the entire context, housing has the implication in terms of physical, social, economic, and environment context. But I think housing remains beyond that, because it gives you identity and you will not be recognized unless you have a house. You go to a passport, you want your Aadhaar card made, you want your PAN card to be made. Anywhere you go, your first and foremost identity will be revealed by what? Revealed by your residential address. So residential address remains very, very important, and that's what we would like to say. The housing remains relevant, and if you are not having any house, you are deprived of many of the welfare program and schemes which are launched by the government of India or the state government, because you do not have a recognition where you are located. Looking at the entire the role, importance, context, and the relevance of housing in the human living, UNO has accepted this as a basic human right. That means providing shelter should be considered as a basic right. They should be included as a basic right rather than right to speech, right to own a property, or right to do anything. I think providing shelter should be the fundamental thing for any society to provide to an individual. And the issue has been debated in the various, UNO declarations, and that's what in 1976, 92, 96, and they have, then they have a strategy for shelter year. There was a year which was totally dedicated to, for housing for all the people in the world, and that gave a declaration that let's define right to housing to be universally recognized by all community and nation. All nations without exception have some form of application in shelter sector. And there are ministries which have been created, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. There are housing boards, there are development authorities, there are improvement trusts. They have all been created. The government even allocate funds in the annual budget. They evolve policies like Prime Minister Awas Yojana, for Gramin and this. There are Indira Awas Yojana. There were Rajiv Awas Yojana. There are numerous Awas Yojana which have been evolved. These policies and programs have been launched in order to focus on housing. So this shows that every government is committed to provide a housing. So all citizens, accordingly, what its mandates, all citizens of this planet, whatever their economic position may be, they have a right to expect from their government. Right, it's not an obligation by the government, but government has a commitment. The government should do what? They should be concerned about the shelter needs and accept shelter as a basic obligation. And they should protect all the housing which has been created rather than damaging and destroying. That means every individual on this planet Earth should be covered in the by a house. And unfortunately, despite the role and importance of housing, out of 195 countries, only 13% of the total countries, they have been able to provide some kind of semblance in housing, whereas 87% of the countries still are fighting and searching for options, to make housing for all as a distinct reality. And please understand, it's not India that we are trying to face this problem. Even UN, or even in America, there are certain cities which have more than 1 lakh people still sleeping on the roads, sleeping on the pavements, etc., or they're sleeping in the cars for the reason they do not have a house. Looking at the context of the housing, I think it's only the population, the urbanization, which are two distinct things. And last time we discussed, that there is a majority of population living in rural India, and also in, urban India is growing. It's only 1/3 now, but I think by 2050, when we last time gave the projection, it is going to be, but half India will be living in urban area, half in the rural area. So therefore, it's population, and we last time said, that India is at the level of 1.41 billion. That's what it is, the population projection and population clock said. And in the month of March or April, we are going to be the most populated country of the world. When you look at the context of population, I think the families are getting smaller, people are migrating. So they're trying to find new jobs. Young people are moving to cities for better opportunity, for education, etc. And all they need will some kind of semblance where they can live. They can live maybe as a student or maybe person when they're doing working in the urban areas. So it is, when you look at the total context of rural housing, and we compare it with national scenario and the urban areas, we find rural housing is a laggard. Rural housing is basically is chasing the urban housing in terms of quality, in terms of number, etc. And we are saying, there are 330 million households which are in India, out of which 220 are in urban, this rural area, and 110 in urban areas. So look at this. There are 66.7% household are in rural area, whereas the population is 68.9%. You can see even the population and the household are not matched, and that's the reason you find there are certain kind of distortion in the housing scenario. So this clearly indicates there is a congestion, there is a quantitative, qualitative shortage, there is a large scale housing obsolescence. There are number of people per room are much more. The construction quality remains very poor, and large majority of houses existing in rural India are kacha. And in addition, they are not being serviced by amenities and services which are essential for qualitative human living. So, number one, that's the proportion in which the housing count is there. On the other hand, there are a number of vacancies. Despite the fact we are having a shortage of housing, there is 6.16% of the households are vacant. That means 13.6 million households are vacant in the rural areas. When we look at the shortage, in terms of what we saw, in terms of what is the population and what is the household available, the 11th 5-year plan, the working group, established by Ministry of Rural Development in the year 2007, estimated that in this period 2007-11, there will be shortage of 47.4 million houses in rural India, which was to increase to 48.8 million in the year 12 to 17. And 90% of the shortage, as per the pattern followed, was in the people who are poor, as a below poverty line. But let me also make it clear. The poverty is not a urban problem or rural problem. Poverty is a human problem. So where there are human beings, there are few rich, there are few poor, So this remains a human problem. But unfortunately, somebody will say this is a poverty is an urban problem. No, it's not neither urban problem nor a rural problem, but it is a human problem. So that is why we have people rich and poor. But why they are called in urban? Because they get concentrated in urban area. In villages, they remain dispersed. Currently, the housing shortage has been made as 43 million houses, as compared to what 18 million, what was projected in the urban area. The shortage is in rural areas more than double what is in the urban area. When you look at the ownership, ownership, because rural India believes in more housing ownership as compared to urban areas. Accordingly, urban rural areas have large number of houses owned by the people that stand at 93.3 versus 61.2%, and the percentage is much higher in scheduled tribe and scheduled caste, for the reason that housing is considered as the largest scarcity of the human being. So everybody would like to have a house, and we all do what, we build houses not for ourselves, for our next generation. So that is the context, ownership, rural India stands better, in terms of number of rooms, rural India is a laggard, and it is said there are number of houses having one or two rooms. They are much higher in rural India. That means there is more congestion, whereas larger houses having more rooms, they are available in urban area. Qualitatively also, the rural housing are at discount because we are only having pakka houses 52%, rest 48% are either semi-pakka or they are temporary, Household, we find, the majority of households are being used for, this housing, residential purposes, but their residence can other use. There are multiple uses. They are more in the rural India as compared to urban India. Condition of household, they are 46% households are good in the rural area as compared to national 50 average of 53%, 53%, and the dilapidation is much higher in the rural India as compared to urban areas. Houses, pakka houses also, we said, the rural India is much behind, as against 94%, there are only 66% houses are pakka in the rural area. Kitchen, when you look at this, again, kitchens are not available. Only 48% household and have kitchens which are attached to the house, rest 60 as compared to 66% in the urban areas. So, but most of the people in the rural areas are, cooking within the area where they are living and creating problem for, this environment, because the kind of cooking fuel we use. Animal shed poultry farm, they are integral part of the rural household. which needs a space, whereas because 62% rural housing have something, some animal or other, which are integral part of their economy and their living, as compared to 15% in urban areas. And that's the context, where when you are planning for rural areas, rural housing, you have to take into account, in addition to how they are different from the urban area. They can't be like urban living, and they are different from this because they are, in addition to human living, they are also catering to the rural, the animal population, which are integral part of their living, economy, and sustainability. Then housing amenities, when you say, safe drinking water is again urban, rural India is having less house, the more people are looking at the, common places, and they are fetching water from outside. Of course, Jal Jeevan Mission and a water tap for everybody in the rural India will at least remove some of the balances which are existing in urban and rural India. Latrine also, because only, 60% of the household do not have any latrine, whereas only in urban area there are 10%. But this shows what the divide and what the quality of life is there. But now Swachh Bharat mission has come in, where latrines are made integral part of the household. They are being given, money. They are giving that expertise. They are providing the technical know-how, how the rural India can have the house. I think this will also further improve. Bathroom facilities, again, they are the very, bathrooms are in rural India only 15% of the houses have attached bathroom, and only 22% are detached, whereas 62% don't have any bathroom, They are just in the open, whereas figure for urban area is much higher and much better, Drainage, again, only 15% household in rural India are having covered with drainage, and with the result, the water is just discharged in the streets or the open areas, creating problem over there. Electricity also, many houses remain, uh, uncovered in the rural area as against the urban area, and accordingly, it is said 1/5 of the rural household do not have any electricity. Whereas I think this Ujjwal mission and otherwise, this providing electricity to villages are going to further improve, will improve the position in the rural area. Roads, of course, accessibility is one, whereas also the rural area has less roads. That's only 50% of the houses are approachable through a motorable road, as against the 73%. So looking at this, you find rural India is having lot of problem, lot of issues, and lot of roadblocks in the providing of the housing itself, So when we're looking at the what is the hindering in the provision of the rural housing, I think first of all, India does not have a correct database that what is the, existing housing. They are all basically, data which is sourced from secondary data, and they are just inferential data. We get it. But, you know, counting exactly that what are the existing status, how many houses are there, how many kacha pakka, everything, because they are made part of your census data, so we are sourcing from there. But housing, remains something which is very dynamic, which is never static, which is always evolving, devolving, and new number of houses are there. But nevertheless, the problem remains that we do not have a correct statistical data of the rural India. What to talk of rural India, even urban India, we don't have that kind of data. So once we don't have a data, I think it becomes bit difficult to make projection and makes plan for rehabilitation. Secondly, we do not have a data regarding eligible beneficiaries, those who need a housing. So because whenever you conduct a survey, there are so many people who are not even eligible, they are included in this, and those are the people who get housing on priority rather than the people who are in need of this. So that is the second problem, in India, the eligibility. The people, it's not the people who are living in slum, they're all basically poor people. There are many people who are doing business, who are running, many things, and they are not supposed to be beneficiary. They are only in the rural India for this slums for the reason because they are getting free electricity, they are free land, and they don't have to pay any kind of taxation, etc. That's what they are localized here. The third is remains the scarcity of land. That's in urban India, the government has been focusing acquiring land, but in the rural India, land remains an issue, and the people don't want to part with this. Then there is lack of adequate research and development. In case of urban areas, we will discuss about that how you know the global sustainable technology mission has been launched. Even the competition was launched, to identify the cost effective, energy efficient, time efficient, and sustainable kind of housing. And there's six technologies out of 54, six were already selected, and they're being made applicable in the Lighthouse project. But no such issue has been taken very seriously in case of rural India. But there are, like BMPTC, Building Material and Technology Promotion Council, they are doing their job, and there are certain cells which have been established at the state level and certain technical institution also. They are working in the domain of the rural India, rural housing itself. But nevertheless, those are very far and few, looking at the complexity of the problem and the magnitude of problem. Again, funds are always an issue because of the magnitude and because of the prevailing large poverty in the rural area. And if there were a lot of funds which have been misused and abused for the reason that there is no mechanism, there was no mechanism to monitor, control, and see that these houses are the funds which are made available are being used for the purpose for which it's been given. And skilled manpower for quality construction remains very, very is an issue which we all know, both urban and rural India. But we are trying to, again, adopting a one-fit solution. We want to provide a house for everybody, whether he needs or she needs, he's a single person. Even then, we would like to give him a house, of 300 square feet, etc. But that's not this. There are, we will have to look for who are the people, what kind of things they need, accordingly, we will have to evolve different options, those who are, they need a house that should be provided to a family. If they're a bachelor, they don't need a house, they need a place where they could be accommodated and they could live in. And then the system of, those houses, not independent houses, but, small houses could be brought in, And then we said that on one hand, we have large vacancy of 43 million housing shortage. And on the other hand, 13.6 million houses are unoccupied. I think they need to be brought back. And we have to understand why they are not being utilized despite fit for human occupation. Then there are issue of the material, there are issues of technology, there is an issue of knowledge, there is the issue
Excuse
of
me, sir.
Haji.
Sir, your PPT is not visible to us.
Is not moving?
No, sir. From the starting, it is not there actually.
It's not there?
No, no,
Okay.
sir.
I'll go back to you. Okay.
Yes, sir, please.
Right. Just hold on. Let me- do the task. Is it visible now?
Sir, your screen is visible. You can just go to your PPT now.
Is it visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible. On full screen, we can put it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Is it there?
Visible now. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Is it moving?
Yes, sir. Now it's moving.
Okay.
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I should have been told. Okay, we looked at we are looking at the issues which are there, and we said we are only adopting one kind of approach to every house to be provided. There's a vacancies, and then we talked about the technology, we talk of the material, we talk of the appropriate design for construction of the housing. But we also understand, the problem are there are a lot of, that's the cost of construction is going up, and also the government charges remain very very high, and housing finance is basically remains inaccessible for the reason there are lot of documentation which has to be done, and there is limited allocation of resources for that, and then the people are all involved in outdated technology and conventional method of construction, which leads to wastage, delays, and rising cost of construction. So we look at the various schemes which have been evolved by the government of India in terms of the rural housing. First and foremost scheme which was very focused. It was Indira Awas Yojana. This was the Yojana which was launched in year 1985. The focus of the this housing scheme was to focus on the people who are the below poverty line and who were not having the houses. And it was has a twin kind of objective. That is number one, providing a safe place to live there, and then eradicating rural poverty. And that scheme involved a cash subsidy of 70 to 75,000 rupees, which was all provided to each every identified household for constructing any house, in a 20 square meter area. And then the cost of the 75,000 was to be shared between center and state, with state center contributing 85% and state giving only 15%. So these houses were constructed by the beneficiary without any outstanding outside assistant and support. So they use their own design, they use their own technology, and the people in the district rural development agencies were involved. So village panchayat were given the authority to identify, and in that, they say 351 lakh houses were constructed with a cost of more than 1 lakh crore. But the total analysis of the scheme was done, it was found there are a lot of fallacies, there are a lot of problems, there are a lot of issues which are in the application of this, because number one, there was limited funds available. That's what there were more beneficiaries, so there was more problem in identifying the right kind of beneficiaries. Secondly, there were role of the local institutions, NGOs, and self-help groups. But there was no education, there was no awareness about the what are the different contexts of the scheme and how it's to be implemented. The funds were inadequate for construction. 75,000 was too less money, to construct a decent house and livable house. So ultimately, people constructed houses which were poor in quality, and since they did not have any support or any kind of input, so therefore they depending upon the own wisdom and whatever somebody guided locally. So ultimately the houses were of very poor quality, and their the initial they were supposed to last 30 years, they were lasting on 10 years. There was a lot of dilapidation which add to further backlog. The space provided of 20 square meter was too less, because space was not adequate of living plus those animal population. So the audit of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India is the main authority. They conducted the total expenditure of the government, how this money has been spent, how it's been used in the scheme. So they said, that they came out with a critical review and stating that this scheme is riddled with design and operation problem. He said the scheme was not properly conceived and not properly operational. Then there was no rational assessment of what the housing shortage was. Even there was no transparency. Who are the correct beneficiary? There was no monitoring. Quality of them was never an issue. There was no technical supervision, and all the schemes were running. This scheme was running independently, and loans were not distributed properly. Then, ultimately now this is the scheme which is in position, and this is called Pradhan Mantri. From Indira Awas Yojana, it has been reconverted. The scheme has been reframed and renamed as Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. So this was done, that scheme was done in 1985, So it continued to run for 31 years. When 2016, in 2014, when Comptroller Auditor General pointed out about the policy in the scheme, then government came out with the new kind of agenda to redefine and take care of those, problems and irregularity, which was, implemented by which was, explained, or which was pointed out by the the Comptroller and Auditor General. Accordingly, what happened, Government of India did what, Government of India revised the scheme. They said, now we will have for identification of beneficiary, they went through a deprivation data which was available with the government, the house, that in order to overcome the inadequate space, the unit area was increased from 30 square meter to 25 square meter. Cost was what aid was being enhanced by 50,000 rupees to 1.2 lakh and 1.3 lakh for the hilly area. And looking at other kind of benefit which they were getting, and those are the toilets, etc., and those the Ujjwala scheme and kitchen and the lighting, etc., it was coming to 150,000. The money was not being passed through the physically, it was passed through electronically, and they went into the direct beneficiary account, and then the progress of the house was being tackled through a mobile application. So National Technical Support Agency was appointed to check the quality of this and monitor the construction, and all monitoring was being done through georeference photographs using a vast map. So in order to make sure that the houses are constructed which are structurally safe, which are culturally and aesthetically appropriate, and they were environmentally supportive. So these people were given given certain kind of design which were prepared by the national the Building Material Technology Promotion Council, and they also undertook the training of the masons, in order to make them skilled for taking the job. Even the people who were providing the materials, that were also being identified. In order to make sure that this housing does not go independently, they also made sure, that Swachh Bharat Mission was there, that take care of the toilets. National Rural and Drinking Mission was for water supply. Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana for electrification, and Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala for electrification, electric connection. Manrega was used for employment, for construction of building material, for amenities, and then, all the common facilities which were to be provided. Even corporate social responsibility funds were also leveraged, and, it was felt, that all the people who are left out from the earlier scheme and who were right kind of beneficiary which were not included, they were included, subject to the condition that the total construction of houses will be frozen at 2.95 crore. So the Government of India provided even funds to the people who are in the process of construction and who are only giving 75,000. They were given additional thing. So this is how in million, these are the number which have been constructed over the year 17 to 22, last 5 years. The highest being constructed in the year 2019, when 47 lakh the houses were constructed. Though this is what the scheme now provides for. There is a convergence, the right kind of beneficiary. They are promoting at quality construction. 118 lakh rural masons have been trained, and there are 108 houses design under the compendium PAHEL has been prepared, and looking at 62 housing zone in the country in 15 states, looking at the environment ecology and the material they are available and the kind of, disaster that they are facing, then they were, the beneficiary was being sensitized and educated in terms of the house design, in terms of the availability of masons, and where, they were made to visit the model houses which were constructed to demonstrate what should be the quality, who are the material supplier, and, even government provided aid to the physically challenged in doing the construction, Then it was thought, that the scheme, the scheme is being constantly monitored and their impact assessment is being done, So since the all money is not going through the government channel, it is going to the direct beneficiary account, it's online transfer, and also the monitoring of the progress is being done through geotagging. So that's what they are keeping a tab, that whether the money given is of being spent on the housing, number one. Number two, the houses are being constructed of quality, etc. And it was looked at what was the scheme of this. It was thought that it was the evaluation made by National Institute of Public Finance said that number of days in which earlier houses were constructed has been reduced to one third. From 314 people were completed in 114 days. And even during COVID, there were cases where people could complete. So what could be the option, Rural housing, we know it remains very complex and a very different task, because it has different connotation as compared to urban housing. And of course, it needs that the basic principle of housing needs to be, honored. That's air, light, and ventilation should be there. And the all houses should be made pakka, and they should not be, subject to dilapidation. They should be able to withstand the problem of disaster which are there. So therefore, I think what now is need to be done. The national housing policy was made in the year 2000, 1988. 2007 policy was only dedicated to the urban housing, but the rural housing was never considered in the 2007 policy, which is in position. So there is a need to review, revise, and redefine the national housing policy, which was done in the year 1998, And there is a need, they have urban housing policy, they need to have a dedicated rural housing policy, so that the issue which are different and distinct, both culturally and both structurally, they need to be mapped, and they have to be brought in, and they have to be taken note of, and they have to be, seen that how they can be overcome in order to make sure that urban rural housing has all the kind of inputs which they need, and they remain qualitatively, and they are serviced by all kind of amenities, etc. Plus they remain structurally safe, cost effective, and they should remain, have minimum of cost in terms of maintenance, etc. The third will be, I think their government has to provide for in the budgeting of all these institutions, in addition to the budget which is done in the national level, they should also provide that all the rural agency, or like NABARD, like HUDCO, like National Housing Bank, they should have a dedicated amount available for the rural housing. Ultimately, we will have to see how the housing are to be created, and we need to have a land bank so that we can provide housing to this. Architectural design will remain another challenge, and they have to be constantly evolving, devolving after consultation with the people, what kind of houses they need, so that they are provided, their facilities, they have to be provided, and then these houses have to be made cost effective, energy efficient, and they have to have a distinct technologies in order to make them more, affordable, so that this, we are not having affordable housing, but affordable living, That's remain very important, because the house is going to be there 40, 50 years, All the time you are spending money in lighting, and also the water you are consuming. So if you can minimize the water consumption, you can minimize the, need of the energy, surely you are cutting down the bills, and you are trying to minimize the main, operational cost of the house. That's what it is important. Then you are inventing new material which are based on the agro and industrial waste which are produced available locally. And secondly, the approach of the rural housing will have to be cooperative basis, because you have skill in the people. Their people can, they can contribute labor, etc. Unlike in urban India, where it's not possible. In rural area, societies have their own fabric, they have their own community, they are well knit, in their own framework. So they can, I think, cooperative approach would remain very, very important. And ultimately, we will have to, make sure that the constructions, the building is not led by construction, but we should go by manufacturing. I think if we have to have cost efficiency, if we have to have, minimum time for construction, we have to standardize the construction, then I think we have to go from the normal system of construction, that construction sector have to go to the, not the normal construction, on-site construction, but off-site construction. That's, we have to graduate to construction sector, to the manufacturing, you know, we have to, these houses have to be beneficiary-led program rather than a government-led program, and then we will have to bring the vacant houses which are available. Skilling manpower, promoting R&D, rationalizing government charges, that will remain very, very, important. So looking at the complexity, looking at nature, looking at the culture of the rural housing. So rural housing has to be dealt on different footing than the urban housing. Rural housing has to be simple, economical, and rooted to the local culture. And it has to be linked to larger economic and social context. It should be, used for generating employment resources, empowering rural people to ensure better living. So there have to be dedicated agencies which are funding the rural housing, and with minimum of documentation, etc., so that we have more wealth available for the housing, and expensive. Then scaling rural India will be more important. And what is more important is all IITs, NITs, and people like you are running the institution. I think like last time I said, please adopt villages surrounded. And if you do that, you do a great job. And within that houses, please see what you can do for development of these villages, including housing. So I think what kind of technology we are saying, what kind of material, what you were suggesting. And I think they have to be local, and they have to be used in the original shape rather than, importing from outside. And they can have your own machines, making those kind of material. So there are self-help groups which are there, which are locally available, and they are locally created rather than buying from market. I think that will contribute to a lot, the making the housing sector in the rural area, considering its magnitude, considering its large number. So I think we have to go by, creating systems by which we can do the mass production. We educate the people so that the houses can have those this offline material which are available for the construction. I think when we have to view the housing in the larger context of the physical and social infrastructure, we have to plan rural housing along with the amenities, and that's what where you have to look at the rural India, and the village as a whole, as a unit. When you do the rural housing, please understand, villages have to be made complex, the compact itself. The development has to be very compact, it has not to be spread, so you can have the advantage of providing infrastructure and services in a smaller area, and that will help you in making the things more economical, more efficient, and more operationally viable. So I think planning and designing of the houses must focus on optimum utilization of available spaces, putting them to multiple uses. And unlike urban housing, we have to move from formal to informal living. So all spaces are being utilized, but never compromise on the basic facility that they have independent toilet, they have a kitchen, which are independent, they are well ventilated, and all rooms have air, light, and ventilation, which is there. Of course, when you do the individual housing, we plan for village, that's an issue which we'll have to look for separately and and for that we need barefoot architects, barefoot planners, and barefoot engineer, who can do this job. And I think if I think it's said, easier said than done, but nevertheless, it's an opportunity, for learning the way the majority of India lives in the rural areas, how they live, how they, construct this thing. I think it provide an in-house option for the people who can, students as well as faculty to learn, how you can deliver best of the living to the people, then we should think of that housing should not be considered as a standalone building. It should be made as integral part of village planning and development, so that every amenities and services which are required to this is all available to the houses which are there, including accessibility, including light, etc., including sanitation, etc. And therefore, cooperative mode for planning, designing would be very, very critical. Last time, what we said, we have to look for the options of skilling villagers in the art and science of construction, operation and maintenance of building. And for that, we will look at the role of building center, which were earlier there and they are still there. They can be used for skilling rural India and producing goods and products used in construction, and aiding advising beneficiary how to go about the construction of good quality housing, and which have least cost as well as least time for this. So I think rural housing, in addition to the quality, etc., they have to be planned, designed, and constructed for safety against natural and man-made disaster. Because you find, every time there is a cyclone or there is a flood, etc., most of these villages, houses, are lost, So therefore, I think we have to identify the areas and identify the, these challenges of disaster which are faced, and accordingly, those houses have to be, involved differently and distinctly. Local material have local material will have to be looked more critically, because we don't want to use the imported material. That will make the building very costly. So therefore, local material and the nature is best. Architect, they have provided the rational kind of material which are to be used locally for the construction. But please understand, the local material needs to be upgraded, and which can be done by your research and development as a part of your teaching learning of in the civil engineering. Plus, make sure these material are used in the natural form rather than any painting or anything to be done. And wherever if you're using a brick, use the brick in the natural form rather than plastering and then painting it and then incurring costs, etc. So the house cost will need to be viewed in the not only in the initial cost but also the life cycle cost, so that you are able to help in affordable living. So their new houses have to be planned, designed not away from the village itself, but in the close proximity of the existing settlement, so that to make them integral part of the social fabric. We have seen, in most of the houses which are now being constructed, what people are done, like earlier we said, they are being given a land in a place outside the village, so they can be clearly identified who are these kind of beneficiaries. They are taken off from the village fabric, and they have the issues of social acceptability and everything. So that is, I think, that needs to be critically looked into. So ultimately, we will also have to see the area allocation to the household should not be only seen in the context of living or working. Even, working is being done by the people within the household. So living, working, and also the, that animal manpower which is there, that could also be considered. But nevertheless, we will have option that we can't mix human living with the animal living if it causes kind of problem and kind of deterioration. So houses designed will have to create healthy homes and promote healthy living, provide adequate air, light, and ventilation, private and security. Here, I would like to say that we can look at the option which has been done by American architect Laurie Baker. Laurie Baker was a British architect. I'm sorry, he was British architect. He worked in Kerala, and all the life is dedicated to rural housing, and he's called the Gandhian architect, and we will share few of his thoughts, in this, and that's what, we can look at what he gave the kind of option in the rural housing. Then they say we have to have traditional construction with modern architecture, and of course, cost, quality, and environment remains very, very important. And he said, red trap method could be used. The Laurie Baker was responsible for bringing red trap bond in India. They wanted minimized door. There was no frame provided for a door. Doors were hung on the pivots. He replaced large windows with jalis. Then he used corbelling and arches instead of lintels and beams. And he said sharing walls could be a wonderful thing, using lime for making the house cost effective. And he says if we are now looking at this, that rural housing has to be put on more professional mode. I think Government of India should consider the rural housing and urban housing is synergized. Whatever option, whatever the technology innovation have been already done in the urban India, I think they can be suitably and appropriately modified and used in the rural context also, of course, with appropriate modification. So ultimately, we will also make sure that the rural housing stock is upgraded on continual basis and made additional to take care of the population which are there. And then I said multiple option will remain very, very important. Retrofitting of existing houses will have to be done in order to save them from the dilapidation, damage, and obsolescence. Rural planning, I said, we have to minimize the migration from rural India and make sure people stay there with the skill, knowledge, experience, and they contribute to growth and development of the rural area villages. Then empowering Panchayat Raj institution will be more important. If the villages have to be planned and developed in a rational manner, then we have to reinvent our construction sector so as to have a rural focused technology. And then we have to have quality construction as one of the major focus area, so that we have based on the local material, local techniques, and that will help in generating employment at the local level. So, like I said, the building material technology promotion, national building construction agencies, and they're all technical institutions which can be, which can be easily put their effort in creating housing. I think research and development in terms of material, technology, and the construction technique shall remain relevant, which can be done only at the level of institution imparting education. So we will need innovative and state-of-the-art architectural design, which provides highest space efficiency and land efficiency, which are optimizing the land resources, which are structurally very safe and cost-effective, and we are using the technology and services which remain appropriate and involving large fabricated component with minimum maintenance and upkeep. So local material and cooperative, we have already discussed, need to be provided for this. So how you do the designing of houses? Let's go by green housing, and what do you understand the green concept? When we talk of the this, let's look at the cost of this. We already said the cost of a house. The initial cost is hardly 10% of the total life cycle cost. And maintenance, you can, this is what the figure is given, 1%. I don't consider it's much less, let it can go to 5 to 8%. So even if the initial cost is 15% and 8% is the maintenance and consumable cost, the total cost which goes into the construction and maintenance is around 20 to 22%, whereas the rest of the 78% cost is the operating cost. So therefore, please look at, you are only looking at initial cost, So you will have to look, we will have to look at the, the operating cost, that is the cost of, the housing, in terms of water supply, sewerage, all kind of things which you do it, and that needs to be minimized. If at all, we have to be, remaining relevant, So if you have to promote economy in building to make it cost effective, life cycle cost of the building will remain more critical. So how you can make the cost of the housing, you can lower the cost. How can you make the house affordable? That means you can, number one, the land component. Land component remains very, very, critical, because land is now very, very expensive. So if the government has the adequate amount of land, a great land bank, and that makes it available at the affordable cost, I think the cost of the houses can be much better. After the land issues there, then the optimal design solution will be very, very important, both architecturally, structurally, services, where the services of these profession of architects, engineer, and all service provider will have to be there. Then we will have to search for cost-effective local material, precast, prefabricated, recycled material, and material requiring minimum maintenance and have longer life, so that people spend minimum money on their maintenance and their use, etc. Then resource and waste have our area which needs to be addressed, and then the technology will have to be such that they save on time, labor, space, material, and money. And then we should make sure that houses are completed in the shortest possible time. And then if we make those houses green, that you reduce the cost of energy, water, and generating its own energy, that will be a very, very helpful thing. And then since the money is required for construction of the houses, I think if the money is sourced at the minimum rate and for the minimum time, the cost, the burden of that interest rate will also go down. And of course, government will have to be responsive with its own levies and fees to reduce the cost. So what is the way the rural housing has to be done? I think we look for this, a green concept. Green concept is nothing. We are using only the working with nature and using the natural element. A green building is nothing. It has 5 components. It uses less water. It optimizes energy efficiency. It conserves natural resources. It generates less waste. And fifth is it makes healthier space for the occupant as compared to conventional buildings. So please understand, it's not, buildings are not 4 walls. It is not dead entities. Buildings are all living, because 80% of human life is spent within the 4 walls of building. Only 20% is outside the building. So the building impact your thinking, psychology, quality, your living, etc. So if somebody wants to be healthy, I think there is no other option but to plan for the green and sustainable building. But please understand, green building doesn't mean you are painting the building green. It's only designing with nature. And nature has what? Nature has the air, sun, and of course, you have landscaping, the plantation, that is sun, space, and greenery remain the 3 major input, which are available. So design with nature, I think that is what leads to the green building. So please make sure that these 5 agendas, that is, using less water, optimize energy efficiency, conserving natural resources, generating less waste, and providing healthier space for occupant as compared to building, shall be the agenda while designing and constructing the houses. And in this, when we are doing this, we are taking care of using the 5, Panch Bhuta. We are all made of Panch Bhuta. All this universe is made of Panch Bhuta. And this Panch Bhuta is what? They are, nature and natural element. They should also be used for, construction of the houses. And what is this? It's a Prithvi, Jal, Agni, Vayu, and Akash. Prithvi is what? Sustainable site. Jal is water efficiency, Agni is energy efficiency, Vayu is indoor air quality, and Akash is the daylight, And these are 5 components. I'm sorry, I don't have the time. Sometime we will see what is a green building, how you design a green building, what makes a building green, what is the approach, what is the, strategy which you have to use. We will do that, And this, I think, is one which you should all know, because this is a climate and all housing has to be climate responsive. There are 5 types of, India is divided into 5 climatic zones: hot and dry, warm and humid, composite, temperate, and cold, And there are 4, that is one, hot and dry, warm and humid, composite and temperate. We are all dealing with the heat, heat of issue. So all the building will be designed in a manner that you are minimizing the intake of heat in the building. And secondly, if the heat is gained, then heat is made to lose. So that is the agenda for designing all these houses. And there are options. How the building is to be made against these kind of things. Heat. You have a building envelope. You have a roof. You have walls. You have opening, etc. All needs to be planned and designed as a part of the strategy. And rest is one. Where in 4 you are fighting with the heat. You are managing heat. Whereas in cold, you are trying to bring heat inside you. So you are trying to capture heat, you are trying to finish this. So whatever this, in case of the other kind of 4, these climatic zone, in case of cold, things will be, totally reversed. In case of all these 4, north and south remains the most preferred destination. Whereas in case of, these cold areas, hill areas, or where the climate is very, very low, the temperature is very, very low, what you have to do is, you have to only do what, you have to make sure that nothing goes on the northern side, So all northern side in the hill area should be banned, There is no construction which has to be done on the northern side. You can use south, east and west for this, construction of the houses that will remain sustainable, And that is, in case of all these 4, you are having white color. Whereas in case of cold area, you will have dark color. You want to have the heat, taken in. So they are the design option which you are going to use. So you will look at the sun, you will look at the behavior of the sun, how the sun moves in the winter, how the sun moves in the summer, And it is said, that a sun in the summer moves around north, and sun in the winter moves around south. It rises in southeast, it sets in the southwest, Whereas in the summer, it is northeast and northwest, So the north remains very cool, south remains very hot, and east and west. East morning sun is pleasant to some extent. West is the worst kind of thing, It is the hottest, because the earth is also generating heat and sun is also giving, both contribute to the rise in temperature, But one thing is very, very important, in the case of south, you are the hottest one, and in in summer the sun is vertical, in the winter it is horizontal. So you have summer sun, which is very dangerous. You cut off by a horizontal projection, whereas in case of winter, this same window will bring sun in. Also, in this southeast remains one of the best option, for housing, etc. But in the case of all these, hill areas, it is except north, you will all east, west, and south remains all relevant because you want a sun. So we said, that in case that you want to have a houses which is cost effective, I think we should know that we all know as engineer, and we all understand what is prefabrication. This was a mechanism where it was thought of in the Second World War, when most of the people who were involved in the construction sector, they had all been lost and they gone out. The manpower was limited, but the need for reconstruction was very, very large. And accordingly, since manpower was very large, construction speed was, volume was very large, and also the time limit was limited. Accordingly, it was thought of, it's not only the on-site construction which needs to be promoted, but off-site construction, which was more rational and relevant, which needs to be inducted, So earlier, we find that in India, we are still following the on-site construction. And on-site construction is a normal construction which follow a linear process, where every first have to be completed before you move on the next phase, And this all construction has an implication in terms of time, cost, quality, safety, noise, pollution, manpower, and then chori kitni hoti hai, and the kind of input you have to put, all this kind of things. So traditional issues, jo site work construction, what we do has a limitation in terms of it is time intensive, it is material inefficient, it is polluting of pollution, etc. It requires large manpower, it is manpower intensive, material intensive, it is individually human oriented, because it depends what the quality of houses will depend upon the manpower you have, and then you will require more resources, you require water, you require energy for all these curing, etc. So it is cost inefficient, cost overrun, and it is very, very difficult to do in the hazard area, and it leads to a lot of disruption due to rain, due to all these weather condition, and it is also implication in the surrounding area. So prefabrication takes off majority of these ills of the on-site, because you can build in the hazardous area, you can be assured of the quality construction, because the components are all being made in the industries, under controlled conditions. So material efficiency, nothing, because all things are silent, because cost effective, because it is all being done mechanically, and they are green construction, because they come in a finished product and they're just put on the site itself. You have a flexibility of design, you have reduced site disruption. Despite anything happening, you can have multiple houses which can be constructed on the site, but even if rain or thing, because there's nothing which is going to be damaged, they are simply put in this. It's a time efficient and this remains safe, but it has its own limitation in terms of monotony. You have limitation in making additional alteration because of the people not valuing it. It has a resale value, and accordingly bank also don't know, because you have made an order and people bring those kind of products, and then they come on this, and within a month or two, the house is constructed. So that bank will look at the stages of construction, whereas it is all manufacturing being done in somewhere else, transported and this. But this that also has issue with regard to financing. Then accuracy and precision required to be high. You have a high transportation cost in terms of machinery and manpower, and it can only be successful if it is constantly produced on a mass basis. And of course, you need a skilled manpower and a lot of cost. So, but nevertheless, looking at all the negativity and positivity are more, and positivity are favoring the construction sector, and accordingly we will go for the these prefabrication, etc. So this is example where 133 houses in the Leh were constructed in 45 days only. Only the plinth level was laid, and the foundations were laid. Rest of the all component, they were transported in trucks. They were all put in place, and they were they used those panels that was polyurethane foam. They were insulated panel. The buildings were much better, much safer, much hotter than what the temperature of minus 40 degree, and they were more sustainable. So that they look at the time, look at the effort, they were all done despite these alls, and this could not have been done manually. Hudco has been there, doing its contribution in terms of rural India, but their major contribution was building center created in 1998. In the 1986 in Kerala, there was they were called a construction, they created a construction cluster, Nirmathi, they were calling it, where they were having the rural people to come construct, and they were prefabricating things, and they were making villagers available, those kind of things, and they was done by the man we were looking at, the Gandhian architect in Kerala. With the help, this was done, and when the government of India found this is very successful, this is very important, this is very relevant for empowering the rural India in terms of construction of houses. So a concept of building center was created in 1988, and the concept was all the technology which are evolved in the labs, they must be from lab to land. It's a rigor and organism, not from land to lab, but lab to land. So that means the technology are disseminated for more people, for constructing affordable housing, for employment generation, for imparting training, creating skilled manpower, and generating wealth, and of course producing products, so that they can make a profit, So in all, 655 urban center, these building centers were created. They trained more than 3 lakh artisans. They created cost-effective technology, introduced technology in producing and building components. They started construction of houses, advising people, and the cost of housing was reduced from 15 to 40%. This was listed as one of the 100 best practices in the rural housing construction for achieving sustainable construction. And then it was, there were a number of other things which were involved in the construction, because they could disseminate this, they could empower people, to build in this. So the bread jali, they created doors, they created frames, they created floors, etc., which can be just taken out and put in their houses, So the concept of solid housing, concrete blocks, pavement tile for substituting bricks for cement, Folgy groups, products, fly ash, lime, etc., and gypsum product, and they even produce wood substitute products for application in the rural India, housing itself. So these are things, MCR tiles, this is what prefabricated blocks in the rural areas which have been building center, which have been produced. They even have those blocks which were used in the construction of the houses. And of course, number of things were done, but nevertheless, in few states they worked very well, but in few states it was neglected because of obvious reason, because there was no focused attention of the government. So Building Material Technology Promotion Council itself was established in the year 1990, where the government of India thought of that building material technology must be disseminated. We must have new kind of material using agro waste. Then we should see what industrial waste could be used for bricks and making blocks, lightweight concrete, bamboo even was used, etc., prefabrication, etc. They were all to be promoted. So they wanted a agency to come in. It's a Building Material Promotion Technology Council. Please go to the website. They are doing wonderful job in terms of construction material, in terms of design, in terms of technology. So they were basically also in the area of producing machines for the construction of this. So all these machines have been prepared at BPM, so that people are, constructing all these ready-made blocks at the local level. They don't have to go anywhere to the industry. They could do at the local level, and they consume it, even for use of these bamboos and all these, roof covering. They were all done, evolved, and they were, disseminated at the local level in order to make houses. Please look at the compendium of Prospecting Emerging Technology for Mass Housing. Please note this. This is a Building Promotion Technology Promotion Council, which have prepared a compendium. What are the emerging technology and mass housing for mass housing. They are very, very innovative, and also please, they prepared, when I said under Prime Minister Awas Yojana, they have prepared like houses. They are like minimalist houses. They have given that standard design, etc. These are the houses designed by them for Assam and for this. And there, I said, more than 100 designs have been prepared by them, which have been disseminated so that people can use them at the local level, And this is what I would also wish to, that this is use of innovating housing technology under Prime Minister Awas Yojana. That is Lighthouse project, which I was talking about. There are 6 kind of technologies which have been accepted as a Lighthouse project after calling a global, companies to demonstrate cost-effective material and technologies. So this has been documented. In addition to those 6, they have also documented, the number of other options which have been used, but majority of them has, their own prefabrication, etc. Please look at this. This document is very wonderful document, and they list, the government of India, I said, have selected 6 lighthouse technology products, and they went through the Global Housing Technology Challenge. I said there were more than 400 or 50 people, the companies which came. 554 were shortlisted. 6 were selected to construct houses, 1,000 houses in 6 cities, to demonstrate. So different climate, different culture, different areas, and different requirement they were selected, and they were given 1 year, complete this. So this was in case of Rajkot, which has been completed, is a monolithic concrete construction which has been used using tunnel framework. Prefabrication has been used in case of Madras, where the people, where the all units are manufactured in industry, transported, and just put on the site. Then prefabricated sandwich panel, which have been used in case of Indore city, and also precast, this in case of precast concrete, that's built houses, built units, that 3D volumetric system that has been used in Jharkhand. In then lighthouse, lease, steel structure system, and pre-engineered steel structure system are used in Agartala, considering the fact, that the area is prone to disaster. So the buildings have to be lightweight, building have to be, flexible to take care of the impact of these earthquakes, etc. And then in Lucknow, they are using polyvinyl chloride as the framework for construction, based on which they are, putting all these walls, etc., in order to construct the houses. There are 6 technologies. There are lighthouse technology. I think that should be relevant for all civil engineers, and they should know it, and they have their own they have built-in prefabrication. Of course, technology involved, they remain costly, but over the time, they can surely be leveraged to make it more economically. This is the gentleman I was referring to, Laurie Baker, and please read his book, A Manual of Cost Cuts for Strong Acceptance and Housing. He's the man, who realized India is very poor. India has limited resources, and he worked throughout his life, in the rural housing itself. And he said, in India, millions of houses, families are homeless. Cost efficiency remain very important. So whatever money is available, what limited money is available, must be used in the most optimum manner without incurring any non-essential thing. And he said, please look at the local material, look at the client who are your poor people. You should be able to accommodate them in all possible manner without much help. And you construct a house, that means house is not structured. This is static. As the family grows, the house must also grow. So you must make the house strong and secure. And you should have all working space available for carpentry and weaving, and then you should not take away the culture and the way of living of the people. They have to be all made integral part of the housing. And then, of course, each house must be served with water, sanitation, air, light, and this. And this is the, concept he gave. If the houses are there, there is only one road, and in one road, you have all these kind of houses which are built in, and these houses are 34 houses which are there, which are planned and designed in community spaces. And he said, if you have a house, you make a core house, and then as a family grows on all 4 sides, you can add to these houses to make this. If there is a number of size plot is larger, but if the plot is smaller, then you think of vertical, and he says, you should have a house with a flat roof and a provision for staircase, and then you can add over phases to have the larger space for accommodating your family. He gave the concept of the rat trap, masonry using the brick, and he says this is very, very important. When you leave the, a space in between the bricks. Bricks are used on edge, not on, they are flats. It reduces 30% of material. It promotes ventilation, but it never impacts your structure and the quality. This keeps, since there are voids inside, so therefore, what is there? That it keeps you warm in, winter, and cool in summer. So this is what he says you have to take care while this, and these are the option he's giving this. And then there are ferro cement technology, which is another cost-efficient technology for construction of your, walls, etc., or panels, etc. And he gave the concept of filler slabs, so that you reduce the material, you reduce the weight, and you reduce the cost of the construction. And using filler slab, you can reduce the cost of the house with 25 to 30%. Arches is one thing which he used it, and corbelling he promoted instead of lintel, etc. And he says if you are spacing the bricks, please make sure that don't break the brick. See that bricks, you can increase and reduce the space so that no breaking of the bricks is done, and the walls are continuous, no brick is broken. And then jalis he promoted instead of for covering the all open spaces, because jali is one which gives you diffuse light, which promotes privacy, it promotes ventilation, etc. But your privacy and security are not compromised. If you are doing a 4.5 inch wall or 9 inch wall, boundary wall, never do a straight line, and do can stagger it, and you will find they are as strong as 9 inches done. So ultimately, it will be the material. It's a material. I think we have to use local material. You have to material which are precast, prefabricated, recycled. You have to have bricks, your material which require minimum maintenance, which are made from the industrial waste. And of course, you will have to reinvent different kind of material which require minimum water forestry and energy itself, which promotes speedier construction and involve minimum transportation. So focus area could be, if there is a building which is demolished, please make sure that best material out of that is taken, and then use that salvage material. You can recycle the contents, but you use local material and use material which are easily available at the local level. Hollow block has been given another kind of option, which are basically more cost effective, more, they reduce the self load of the building, they are quicker, they are faster, they don't need a plastering, etc., and they have more sustainability. So these are bricks, these are bamboo is the steel of 21st century. Bamboo remains very, very important because it is strength at par with hardwood. It is high flexible. It's a earthquake resistance, lightweight, cost effective, durable, fast growing, and simple design. And this is, you minimize the use of wood. The environment friendly it is, generate employment, and also it reduces carbon footprints of this and improve quality of air. Fly ash, we all know, because fly ash has a reduced embodied energy, environment friendly. It's a best of the insulation. It doesn't go to the fire. It doesn't promote a fluorescence, And there are, this is new kind of innovation which is made. All these bricks, the bottles have been filled with earth, and they have been used to construct these houses. So that is what the globally things are doing. 3D printing is another kind of mechanism which is being used and which is being evolved, which is leading to high efficiency and also quality. With this, I conclude, and I know this is a subject which is very, very, long and which is very complex, but nevertheless, I have tried to take you through the journey of this material, so that we can understand that this housing, rural housing, remains very complex, very critical, but nevertheless a challenge for all of us, and we should be able to meet those challenges with our understanding, with our efficiency, and also, this uh, our knowledge. And I would suggest all of you to please remain, just focus on this. Please look for this, that there is a challenge, there is a need, and that's what we have to meet. And if urban housing remains important, I think rural housing is more important and more focused, and they need our, this challenge. Thank you very much.